All right, you guys, this is another video that I wanted to talk about today. Um, Black Lives Matter originated, and it kind of was what sparked this movement was with the Trayvon Martin case. Trayvon Martin was a kid that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and there was a person. His name is George Zimmerman, a white Hispanic person who was a vigilante, and he saw Trayvon Marvin, and he called the cops. He looked suspicious, and he followed him when he shouldn't have. He got into an altercation with Trayvon Martin, and unfortunately, Trayvon Martin began to punch George Zimmerman. They got into a fight. George Zimmerman was losing the fight. He was risk of dying because of the blows that he was receiving from Trayvon Martin, and he shot him in self-defense. He did shoot him in self-defense. Now the case is that he was set free. I don't believe that he should have been charged with murder, but I do believe that there should have been manslaughter because of the way he handled the situation. All of that could have been avoided if he had just listened to the 911 operator and stayed at its distance. But he chose to engage with Trayvon Martin, and that resulted in Trayvon Martin's death, which was unfortunate. Of course, the media portrayed him and making him look as a very innocent kid. That was not true, but it doesn't. But he wasn't also a criminal. You know, he wasn't a criminal, but he wasn't as innocent kid as they make it seem to be. Of course, people always want to play sides. They want to say he was a criminal, those who justified it, and the other ones say no, he was an angel. Well, how about he was both? A little bit of both, just like any human being can be. You know. So, anyways, then what really caused Black Lives Matter was the Michael Brown case. Michael Brown, he was shot in self-defense. You know, I believe it was his friend. I'm sorry, I don't. His friend was the one that said that he had his hands up, but other witnesses said that he didn't. He wasn't. He didn't have his hands up, and that narrative of hands up, don't shoot is just not true. But one thing that we can't deny in St. Louis, around this Ferguson, it is the police over policing in that territory. And I know sometimes people want to say that, oh well, like I'm not the type of person that jumps on the bandwagon of the race card, but I do like to look at things from a critical from a critical standpoint, and I like to really try to see it from a standpoint that's logical, rational. You see, Ferguson was a place that many African Americans felt that they were being discriminated not because of the Michael Brown, but they were fed up with the police department in Ferguson and how they were treated in that county. And it's true. There's many evidence that they saw how many white police officers in Ferguson were very prejudiced against the African community. I'm not the type of person that denies that. You see, I like to look at things from all angles and all perspectives, and Ferguson was an area where many African Americans were being mistreated by the police officers. Now, when it comes to Darren Wilson, yeah, it's true. I mean, he did act in self-defense. But in that area, in Ferguson, you can't deny that many of these cops were racist. And that is something that we need to come together, and we need to come in the middle. Because I do know that disproportionately, blacks are not killed just because they're black. If it does happen, it's because they do commit 50% of the crime. But we can't deny that there is some incidents in some places where there is racism. Here's the thing. I'm not going to try to, I don't want to go off topic a little bit, but Asians also go through racism. But a cop would think twice by abusing his authority on an Asian person, because many Asians live in areas where they might be influential, and many of the times they have encounters with police, like positive encounters because they know them personally. So it's hard for you to abuse your authority on an Asian person, a person of East Asian descent, because a lot of them are very good, are well, they're pretty good in their communities, and it wasn't like, and they're way much better off than they were back in the days when they were being persecuted in San Francisco. Oh, not persecuted, but there was riots against them, and they were beaten by Americans who show prejudice against the Chinese. We live in a completely different time. And the reason why sometimes cops are able to abuse their authority usually happens on poor class. And I believe that's the reason why at times, sometimes, not all the times, they're able to get away with that on some African Americans. Because they were not going to be able to do that against somebody like LeBron James. They wouldn't. Even if it does happen, there will be consequences. Severe consequences for that cop. But the thing is that what I do know is that there's some places in the southern part of the U.S. where if you live in a middle class neighborhood, these people in the South, some people in the South, many people in the South, I guess they're fed up, annoyed with this stereotype that they are racist, that racism resides in the South, and they're annoyed and they're fed up with that. So many of these areas where they're middle class in the South, the police do not act as prejudiced in areas, but there is some areas in the South, which you can say this is the state of Missouri, Alabama, Georgia, Carolina, and areas where you have majority of counties where African Americans make up the majority in these areas. But in that same area, they're being policed by a majority white officers, white cops, white police. And these are the people that actually go through this racism. It's funny how usually the media tries to look at examples in democratic cities when chances is there's very little racism from cops. But in these counties where they're in the South, Missouri, where the majority are African American, and the people who are policing these counties are predominantly white, these are the places where you do have incidents of racism. And I think as a person, we can't deny that. If we want to find justice, and me as a Christian, if we believe in justice and we believe in fairness, we need to acknowledge that exists. Now, I don't believe that it exists in every police department because I don't like to jump in the Black Lives Matter movement. It's a leftist organization. I despise that organization. I despise the media narrative that America's racist. But I'm not going to overlook an incident where it actually does occur in this country. And I think we need to definitely address that issue. As a person, I'm very motivated and very inspired to do this because of my faith. But the problem is that many of the times we don't address these issues because we look at it from two points of view. Like there's the American Christian church, the American conservative church, that they focus more on being an American than being a son of God. You see, it's more about being an American Christian. We're like patriotism and all of this and all that stuff, but we're so focused. It seems that they're more focused on an American version of Christianity than completely just being surrendered to the glory of God and just promoting the kingdom of God. You can still be proud to be an American. You can still be proud to be a conservative, but let that be secondary. Just let that be secondary. The nucleus, the center, it should be Christianity. But here's the thing. It happens too as well in the black church. Black churches following trends of secular black Marxist movement, black leftist movement that has no biblical truth to it. And you're just doing it because we believe that, because I'm black, I'm supposed to support this. We're black, and just in case I'm a black pastor, and no, use discernment. You don't have to follow all of this just because of the skin of your skin color or your culture. The most important thing is not just that you're a black Christian, but that you are a Christian. Now, that doesn't usually happen with Hispanics, because usually Hispanic Christians, and I'm not saying it because I'm Hispanic. I'm just saying it. Hispanic Christians are usually very, very don't fall in that category, because they're usually that's culturally Hispanics are not Christians, Protestant. What they are, however, are Catholic, and you can see that as well in Catholics and the Italian communities in the U.S. That it's more about a tradition. It's more about I'm Mexican. I'm a Mexican Catholic. I'm an Italian Catholic. And it has nothing to do with really representing what the church believes in. It's more about tradition. And I'm saying this because of this, because when it comes to the South, there is a people that they're trying to overlook the racism that still goes around in the South. And it's there. But I do believe that in areas where there's a middle class in the South, there is not racism as it is in these rural areas. It is the rural areas where you have more prejudice than you do have in places that are suburbia. Now, here's the thing. How to change the law? My question is, what type of things are we going to do to change the law? The problem is to address these issues, we need to be very, very careful of how we're going to change the law. Are we going to do an affirmative action? And I think that's pretty unfair. I don't want to live in a country where we're going to hire more Hispanics and blacks and the police officers. You may not be qualified as this white officer, but we just want to do it because you're not black. And I don't want to live in a time where an Hispanic, these laws of stand your ground, where anytime when a white person actually defends himself and he actually is justified, automatically the people will assume that he was a racist, and they don't look at the whole backstory, that maybe he actually did act in self-defense, and the only way that they could like prove that he was innocent if there was an African American or a person of color that was there as a witness, because a white person as a witness is not good enough, because they're both in it together. I don't want to live in a society like that. I refuse to live in a society like that. You see, Martin Luther King says, do not judge a person by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. I refuse to live in a society like that. And what kind of laws do they want to have in place? What do they exactly want to do now to fight this racism? We need to ask ourselves these serious questions, because I don't want to live in this society where all of a sudden we condone crime in the fear of not receiving a backlash that we will be called racist. We need to use our wisdom. We need to use discernment in these things. Because the question is, what are we really trying to achieve? Because I pointed out, I don't deny that there's racism. I gave you examples of how that happens. But what are we going to do about this? Are we going to try to look for justice, or are we going to try to get for revenge? Payback on people that had nothing to do with that. So we need to ask yourself these questions, because the truth is, I'm very tired of this division. I'm very tired of what's going on in this country. I'm tired of what's happening in the world. And I'm speaking out because I think that there is things that as a culture we need to point out and go back to the truth. All right. So I just want to share that, and I hope you guys have a great day. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Fresh News, and like my page on Facebook.